Modern big-budget sports games suck for the most part. They are lazy simulations of popular sports where rosters are the only discernible changes between years. AAA sports games of the late 90s to mid-2000s were far more arcadey. They tended to focus on fun rather than simulation. Case in point, today's subject, SSX3. Snowboard Supercross 3 is the third game in the SSX series, and oddly the only one with a number in the title. This was a staple of my childhood, and with winter here, it only felt appropriate to review. SSX3 was released October 20th, 2003 for the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. As you may notice, the personal computer is not listed there, so I've had to break out my real PlayStation 2 and legally acquired copy for today's video. Though apparently SSX3 was re-released for the Xbox One in 2018, so there is an easier method out there. As with every game I review, it's time to dig into the development. SSX as a series was the brainchild of EA Canada, now known as EA Vancouver. They make all the sports games. The publisher for the SSX series has always been EA, but the games themselves have been under various labels. Most of the series resides under EA Sports Big. This was EA's label for extreme sports and more casual sports games. Officially licensed simulation sports were under the EA Sports label. That was until Big was axed in 2008, likely for recession-related reasons. But this brief period of time led to the creation of around 20 fun and inventive games, like SSX, NBA Street, Freakstyle, and Def Jam Vendetta. One day, Def Jam, one day. SSX3 was designed from the get-go to be one near seamless environment. There had been plans for this in previous games, but they had never come to fruition. The executive producer, I'm sorry, Stephen Rhett Schaffner, had the team use Island Lake Lodge as inspiration for the in-game mountain. The guy was apparently integral in the creation of the Big label and the SSX series. Steve is an avid winter sportsman, as it turns out, to the point that he was on the US freestyle ski team from 1977 to 1981. Not gonna lie, I was going into the section preparing to dunk on the guy, but I leave with a healthy dose of respect. Hope the next game he makes is good. I wish there was more for me to discuss, but there really isn't. I can't find many interviews, and EA never shared the sales for any of the SSX games. So I don't know where it stands other than the fact that I owned it, most of my friends owned an SSX game, and I would put $5 on the fact that you did too. I have some ideas about the future of the franchise, but I'll save that for the end. For now, I'm going to marvel at the visual presentation, which I think is impressive for a PlayStation 2. The snow effects alone are visually gratifying. I think the fact that 20 years later I'm marveling at how the snow is being parted by my snowboard should say enough. But I would be negligent if I didn't mention the varied snow textures like fresh powder, normal packed, and hard ice. I'm not entirely sure if these have a gameplay effect, but if they do, I would assume powder slows you down and ice speeds you up. Each part of the mountain has its own sort of theme. Peak 1 is warm and inviting, effectively the bunny slope. Peak 2 is later in the day or overcast with a touch of danger. Peak 3 is stormy, foreboding, and actively trying to end you. Each peak has a distinct background that provides a visual sense of scale, though it can be fairly obvious it's a JPEG at times. Little visual details are everywhere, and they go a long way. Like how treetops will break off as you crash through them, the character loading animations like Mac taking a nap on a gondola help sell their personalities. Various pyrotechnics and stage hazards don't hurt either. I will say that the texture work itself looks a tad low res even for the era. Certain parts of the map consistently cause my PlayStation to slow down, but I can excuse these technical flubs for the absolutely fantastic animations. Specifically, the trick animations. The Uber tricks alone are legendary, but the normal fancy flips and spins have their own visual character too. I don't have many more words to explain this looks pretty, so I'm gonna move on. The soundtrack to SSX is pure nostalgia to my ears. It's on the same level as Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Unfortunately, this means that most of the music is licensed, so I cannot post it for fear of the bad touch of the law. What I can post is this boring segment of me snowboarding with only the ambient sounds of the mountain.
Outclassing them all! Yeah, boy!
They are really well done, but it's not the same without EA Radio Big. I actually re-enabled the music after the last clip because I couldn't handle the lack of music. I'd rather jam to some Fatboy Slim. The voice quips between characters are also really fun. It's dynamic too because as I pass by Vigo, he and Mac are talking shit to one another. Your character will also have some line for when they fall down or land a trick. It's another little layer that helps sell the characters as distinct individuals. But the real reason you play SSX is for the gameplay. I find it hard to describe how much I actually like playing the game. The characters at max level feel amazing to control. You are flying down the mountain around 50 to 60 miles per hour performing sick tricks. I grew up in a place where it did not snow often, so it was always cathartic for me to go virtual snowboarding down some mountains. SSX3 is surprisingly a bit of a grindathon once the nostalgic wonder begins to wear off. You start off on the first peak and have to complete all of the race or freestyle challenges to unlock the next peak. This doesn't sound too bad until you are stuck on a particular level for days and need to finish recording for a video. If you're having trouble with a particular run, you can always come back later after upgrading. Upgrading your character is a pretty central mechanic in SSX3. Each character starts with a 1 in every skill out of a maximum of 11. You're able to spend your winnings from events to incrementally increase them. The higher the level, the costlier the increase. You will mostly only be seeing gameplay of my boy Mac because of this. I didn't feel like grinding out more characters partway through my second. As you explore the mountain, you'll see a variety of rails, drops, jumps, and more to traverse. You perform basic tricks like spinning or flipping with the D-pad. You can even mix it up with different board grabs on the triggers. If you manage to land a trick, the funny name will display on the bottom, though sometimes even the game can't figure out what I just did. Doing tricks increases your boost meter. This can be used to speed yourself up after a fall or off a jump. When the boost meter is maxed out, you are able to perform uber tricks. These are done by pressing square and one of the shoulder buttons while in the air. Don't forget to add some spin. The first level of uber tricks is shared amongst all riders, but level 2 tricks can be customized to your preference, as long as you have the cash money to do so. Having spelled out super uber, the dumbest oxymoron, level 3 of uber tricks is activated. Here your boost meter will no longer deplete for the duration of Uber level 3, which is about 30 seconds to a minute, I'm never quite sure. In case you find yourself stuck, the select button acts as a soft reset. It will place you back on the track, but it will subtract most of your boost meter, not to mention the dropped combos. One thing I want to mention is the simple genius behind the track design of SSX3. Most tracks have multiple lanes that you can choose to take. One might allow you to perform more tricks, or another is significantly shorter than the others. The lanes interweave with one another and you can take advantage of this to cross lanes mid-track. There are 2 different kinds of events, races and freestyle. Races are self-explanatory, get to the bottom of the track first. Usually, courses will have assorted shortcuts to take advantage. Conversely, you can make your own sometimes. It can also be helpful to knock down your competition. The reward will be a full boost. Beware, because there can be consequences for trying. Freestyle is where the real fun of SSX lies for me. Tricks are the name of the game here. Your goal is to get the highest score in a maximum of 3 heats. The first 2 heats will have their scores combined, while the final heat will set the score back to 0. This is where the combo system really comes into play. Each successive trick will add to a combo multiplier and a bonus. Letting the time run out awards you the available bonus. Falling on your ass will drop the combo. There are 3 different freestyle events: slopestyle, big air, and super pipe. Slopestyle is a track similar to a race, but often with more jumps and rails. You will still have to pay attention to the time as you need to finish the course within the limit. Big air is self-explanatory. The tracks are often somewhat short, but include some of the largest jumps in the game. You can perform all kinds of tricks in the years of airtime you have. Super pipe is the last event and also probably the easiest. You are given a half pipe and told to perform as many tricks as possible in the time allotted. These are usually incredibly easy, but they also hold a special place in my heart, mostly because they remind me of a particular series of skating games. Race and freestyle both have additional rival events when you have placed in all available events. Each peak has some fraudster who claims that they are the best on the mountain. It's up to you to prove them wrong. The first stage will have you speeding down the highest track of the peak for first place or gnarliest combo. Once completed, the all peak challenge can commence. This is a timed event to get from the top of the highest unlocked peak to the bottom of the mountain. When I was younger, I remember running out of time when doing the freestyle challenge. This was not another problem that carried over to adulthood. though I will admit to restart scumming a lot. When you have completed all the events, there's always free ride. Each course has additional challenges and collectibles to gather. Plus, you can even use free ride as a way to practice runs if needed. Don't forget to check your MCOM for messages or stop by the lodge. There you can spend money on attributes, cosmetics, Uber tricks, songs, and secret characters. These characters include Eddie, Svet Luther, Boneless, Canuck, and more. Cheat characters are actually just reskins of your current character. That's nice on a max level character, but not so great on a low level one. You can either grind out all the requirements for the secret characters, or I could just instruct you on a lost art. Back in the day, we had these things called cheat codes, where if you knew the right code, you could get access to certain abilities, weapons, or characters. These were usually holdovers from the days where QA was trickier to do. Now we just pay a few bucks for the exact same thing. But those codes are out there on the internet if you care to find them. I do think SSX3 has a few fundamental flaws. The first of which is the game physics. Normally they're fine, but every now and then I will clip something weird and go flying. And there doesn't really seem to be a reason for it. Sometimes I'll even get stuck on a rock and am unable to go anywhere without soft resetting. This can feel especially cheap if it drains a full Uber meter. I'm also constantly going out of bounds on areas that look like they should be traversable. When I go there, I instead receive a penalty. It's a reminder that this was a PS2 game, and the developers were doing what they could to make you ignore the man behind the curtain. I really wish that there were more tracks. The existing tracks are great, and I can even appreciate how the devs managed to reuse what tracks they had to the better of the gameplay. I just wish there were more than 6 race tracks and 3 of each assorted freestyle event track. Since it's all the rage in the current gas era to reboot everything, I would like to see a new entry or a remake for SSX. Dead Space got a remake. It shouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for SSX, right? Well, I do have my strong doubts. The problem mostly stems from the difficulty to turn it into a profitable service. It would be possible to monetize, but how are you going to implement a battle pass in an arcade sports game? You would need to be constantly adding new characters, skins, cosmetic items, and not to mention entire tracks and events. And that's not getting into the tough question of should it be a single player or online multiplayer only game? All of that on a game that will likely lose most of its population within the first 3 months of release. That sounds incredibly costly for a niche series of arcade snowboarding games. It would be a much safer bet to just copy-paste the next FIFA game and use the proceeds to fund anything but Titanfall 3. I honestly think it's better to look elsewhere for your contemporary snowboarding games. In conclusion, SSX3 is a wintry blast of nostalgia that I think still holds up to this day. The gameplay is solid with only minor hiccups, most of which seem to be more representative of hardware limitations than outright flaws. SSX3 is available for purchase on the Xbox One for the duration of that console's remaining life. Otherwise, you're going to have to find a copy on eBay or acquire it some other way. That's another game crossed off the list. Hopefully I can make a dent in this thing before I'm 40. Thanks for watching.
EA Sports.